Hello, ClimateCAP. Woo! For those joining late, we have some more space upstairs, so feel free to head up on there and fill in some spaces down here. So welcome everyone. Hope you're all enjoying this unseasonably warm winter weather in Michigan, courtesy of climate change. So if you need more proof that we have something to get done, here it is. My name is Nick Rojas. I'm a third-year ERB dual degree student, originally from Sacramento, California, and co-chair for Strategy and Ops. Welcome to ClimateCAP 2024 Sustainability in Motion. This is the largest summit yet, with 406 students from 39 different programs. When our team first met in December of 2022 to prepare our bid to host, we knew we wanted to bring a unique perspective to the conversation, telling the story of Michigan and the greater Midwest, a region that often is characterized as the Rust Belt or having its best days behind it. But as a geographic climate haven, we believe the region is positioned to lead the charge on creating not just a more environmentally sustainable future, but a socially and economically just one as well. We hope you find opportunities to learn more about how we, all of us, as future business leaders and climate advocates, can make that future a reality. Welcome to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we hope you have a fantastic few days with us. This summit is all possible because of the incredible team who have worked tirelessly for over a year to make it happen. Thank you to my fellow co-chairs, first and foremost. And to our student planning committee for their steadfast dedication to making this a reality. I also want to say a huge thank you to our ops team, Haley and Shivali, as well as our Chief of Staff, Brad, who I'm sure is somewhere making this all possible, and our volunteer VPs, Andres and Siddhartha as well. A shout out also, oh, thank you, yeah, round of applause. A shout out as well to our faculty, Charlene and Sarah, our advisors, Terry, Kevin, Neil, Jessica, and Katie, and staff, Lacey, Ian, Sandia, Elizabeth, and Elise, for their early and consistent support throughout the process. Thank you as well to the Ross Marketing and PR team, Ross IT and Operations team, the Ross Career Development Office, and the Duke Fuqua Edge Center for being allies and advocates, and for working in partnership with us to bring this summit to fruition. With that, I'd like to hand things off to Alex Reid.
My name is Alex Reid. Like Nick, I am a third-year dual degree student at ERB and originally from Detroit, Michigan. So this is really special for me. This year, I led the program development for ClimateCAP. And first, I want to thank our program team, Arpit, Carter, Eli, Jacob, Jake, Jaya, and Marcus. Thank you for helping to design and build this amazing program. You have all done an incredible job putting this together, this complex puzzle, and you should all take pride in what we have accomplished as a team. The power of ClimateCAP lies in the collaboration and exchange of ideas that occurs in these rooms. To that end, I want to thank all our speakers and session facilitators for coming to Ann Arbor and sharing your stories and perspectives. You continue to forge a path for the students in this audience to find meaningful careers in business and sustainability, and we appreciate your commitment to fighting climate change. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nikhil.
Thank you. Hello, ClimateCAP. It is a great feeling and very surreal to be here, finally kicking off the summit, so thank you for being here. I'm Nikhil Khurana. I'm a second-year MBA from Melbourne, Australia, and I led the sponsorship efforts for our ClimateCAP team. I'd like to first shout out Satya, Nakunj, and Aman, the VPs of sponsorship. Thank you so much for your incredible work and for us working together as a team, riding the roller coaster and smashing our fundraising targets. I'd like to give them a hand. To our sponsors, this summit truly would not be possible without your support. Thank you for your dedication to fostering real change, driving innovation, and promoting sustainable practices in your respective industries. Thank you for making ClimateCAP a reality and investing in the careers of each and every MBA in the audience today. So with that, I'd like to acknowledge our amazing 2024 summit sponsors, energyRE Energy, Amazon, Maya, Pacifico Energy, Trane Technologies, Marathon Capital, Chevron, related companies, energyRE, Boston Metal, Schneider Electric, Mananalu Water, Engie, and the Herb Institute. Please, let's give them a hand. Hand it over to Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Cohen, co-chair for marketing on the ClimateCAP team. I'm originally from New Jersey. I lived in Seattle before coming to Michigan. This is so surreal and exciting to be here with all of you, and I can't wait to get to know many of you over these next couple of days. Who's in the room today? Had some slide order issues. There are 406 students attending. As Nick said, this is the biggest ClimateCAP yet. So thank you all for making the trip here, what we thought was going to be the dead of winter, but still yet to Michigan. We are so, so happy to welcome you. We have over almost 40 colleges and universities represented, 54 speakers and sponsors, speakers and moderators that you're going to hear from over these next few days, 14 sponsors that Nikhil just mentioned, and 33 educators. So really just excited for this to be such a big event and to be here with all of you. Now on to just a couple of logistics as the marketing person for the next couple of days. So thank you for bearing with me. I have been the one blasting all of you with Whova notifications over these past few weeks. But it has been amazing to see all of the engagement in the app leading up to the conference, and we want that to continue. So keep connecting with each other, reaching out to each other, joining those informal coffee chat and impromptu meetups. We also have a lot of information in the Whova app for you. So if there's something you can't find, please click into the descriptions. We have a lot of information about our amazing speakers, the sessions, and logistics information in there for all of you. But if you can't find what you're looking for, we also have the Ask the Organizers channel all set up so we can answer any questions that may not be answered already for you. And then around the building, we have our team in these vests or volunteers with the yellow lanyards. So feel free to flag one of us down and ask any questions as well. I also just want to quickly address how we're going to run Q&A throughout the entire summit. So within the Whova app, you guessed it, if you click into any session that has speakers attached, there will be a button for Q&A. You can submit your questions and then upvote each other's question. At the end of the session, we'll have a moderator come up and go through the questions. So everything will be done through the Whova app. We do have a couple of sessions, maybe just one or two, that don't have Q&A enabled. That's just because they're extremely short sessions and we're not going to have time, so it's not an accident. And then social media, I know you will all be posting about this awesome event throughout, so please make sure to tag both ClimateCAP and Michigan Ross in your Instagram and LinkedIn posts. We want to see what you're up to and that you're enjoying the conference. So we have an amazing program planned for all of you over these next 2 days. Are you guys excited? Well, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our first speaker to open the conference, our very own Dean at Ross, Dean Sharon Matusik.
Thanks. Well, hello. As you heard, I'm Sharon Matusik. I'm the dean here at the Ross School of Business. Welcome. And I have to say, it's incredibly gratifying to see so many people here from so many places. You with the incredible skills and experiences to drive our future together, and to see you all come together, aspiring to leverage those skills and experiences to further your commitment to climate and sustainability is it's just really awesome. Our mission here is to build a better world through business, and so especially to seeing so many of you share in that spirit of our mission and aiming to do that in your own ways is just really an incredible moment. This is something that we hold as very important in our state, at our university, and here at the Ross School. So it seems especially appropriate to welcome you here to our town, named after our beautiful trees, in our state, surrounded on 3 sides by water, and having one of the largest supplies of fresh water on the planet. As you come here together, I wanted to share a few words about what's going on here to hopefully set the stage for a productive time for you during this summit. First, a few words about Michigan. We are incredibly proud of the groundbreaking climate action and legislation here. We're one of the top 5 states for clean energy commitments, number 2 for federal funding related to climate and clean energy, and the newly passed laws here will create over 160,000 jobs, bringing in over $8 billion in federal tax dollars. The Michigan Healthy Climate Plan and its roadmap to 2030 will ensure meaningful advancements on climate by the end of this decade. The Clean Energy Future Package and Clean Energy and Jobs Act, passed in November, set a 100% clean energy standard by 2040 and also expanded our renewable energy standard. It will help Michigan lead the future through lower energy costs, creating great jobs, protecting our natural resources, advancing public health, addressing environmental injustices, bringing in federal dollars, and mitigating the impacts of climate change. And that's just at the state level. On campus, our president is leading the way for other universities. Over the last 18 months that he's been here, he's moved forward on many initiatives related to sustainability, including creating 2 high-level executive leadership positions. One related to our operations and the sustainability of us as a campus, as a system, and another at the vice provost level to oversee all of our academic-related content in the area of sustainability. Beyond the formal, I feel incredibly fortunate to have many dean colleagues across this campus. I see Peck sitting right up there. We are regularly getting together and talking about sustainability, talking about how we can leverage the power of each of our different units and work together to do something incredibly special to drive this agenda forward in a way that's more than we could do on our own, but is something we can also advance collectively. At the Ross School level, we have many initiatives here and in partnership with our friends across campus, including the School for the Environment and Sustainability. Our Herb Institute, for example, has been engaged in meaningful work in this area for over 25 years. We're proud of all the offerings in the classroom, ranging from impactful courses here and across campus to our ESG concentration in the MBA and our dual degree programs. We also offer many action-based learning opportunities where our students are implementing sustainable solutions for the companies that they're working with. We're proud of the deep and impactful research being conducted by so many of our faculty, and we're proud of the many, many cases that our faculty are writing that inform not only the experience of our students here at Ross, but students around the globe who are interested in learning more about sustainability. We're also proud that we have sustainability content, even our executive education programs. We have a wide variety of courses that we teach, including ones that focus on things like sustainability for corporate directors. In sum, we're driven to make a difference through interacting with our students, other educators, business leaders, our state, and through our research. And we are especially honored to be able to convene this event today, to bring together future leaders like you who are going to be driving our future. In a world filled with change and uncertainty, people are increasingly looking to business to help address the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead. For those of you with the skills, experiences, and connections to drive change in the arena of climate and sustainability, those opportunities are virtually endless. So it is my hope that you will find your time here together to be productive and inspiring. We need all of you working together to help us build a better world through business. We hope the Ross School can help to support and encourage you in this. Thank you for joining us, and I'm now going to introduce our speaker, Oakley Roberts. Oakley Roberts is the Vice President of Innovation for Trane Technologies, a global climate innovator focused on sustainable solutions for buildings, homes, and transportation. Oakley is responsible for leading the company's innovation system and culture, which helps accelerate growth through the introduction of innovative new products and services that push the boundaries of what is possible for a sustainable world. Additionally, he leads Trane's innovation partner ecosystem and works to expand the company's global network of partners in climate technology innovation. Oakley has worked with the company for 22 years and held various executive leadership positions in business unit management, sales, product management, and engineering. He has many patents and innovations and holds an MBA from Indiana and a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Wright State, but I understand he's a big Wolverine fan. So welcome, Oakley.
Thanks, Sharon, for that introduction, and good afternoon, ClimateCAP. It's great to see you. I tell you, I'm excited to be here, and I'm inspired. I was here this morning. We did these coffee talks where we had a chance to interact with a lot of the talent in the room, and I'm just inspired about the talent that each one of you are bringing as MBA students to want to talk to companies that are on the leading edge of trying to make a difference in climate change. I look forward to talking to you today. Thanks, Sharon, for the introduction. As mentioned, I'm the innovation leader for Trane Technologies. We are 100% focused on sustainability, and my role in the company as innovation director is to have the privilege with 40,000 of my colleagues to wake up every day and think about what we do to challenge what's possible for a sustainable tomorrow. You may recognize this by a couple of our market-leading brands. Trane, where we focus on the heating and cooling of both homes and commercial buildings, and in the climate transportation space with our market-leading brand, Thermo King. I'm here today to talk to you about two of the largest market opportunities we have to make a difference in climate change. One is the impact to reduce the emissions on the built environment, and the other is to reduce emissions of food loss and food waste. Caught up with the slides. So, as Americans, we spend 87% of our time indoors. And every time I read that statistic, it makes me want to pack up my bags and go camping. It's unbelievable the amount of time we spend inside of buildings. And as a result, 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions are related to operating buildings. And if you add into that the embedded carbon from construction, it goes up to over 40%. At Trane Technologies, when we think about our direct mission of heating and cooling buildings, roughly half of that, or 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions, are related to heating and cooling, and something that we can address directly with our innovations. If you add to that 10% of greenhouse gas emissions from food loss and food waste, as an enterprise, we have an opportunity to address 25% of global greenhouse gas emissions. It's a huge opportunity, and it's why our mantra that one company can change an industry and one industry can change the world is so purposeful, because of the magnitude in front of us to deliver innovations and technology to solve these challenges. Our CEO often reminds us that we're not just an incumbent, but we're a disruptor. And I'm going to talk to you today about our approach to our sustainability strategy and how we're having a direct impact through innovations upon these two market opportunities. Back to Trane Technologies, we're 100% focused on sustainability. Our revenues are over $17 billion annually last year. Our market cap is over $60 billion, and you'll find us traded with the stock ticker TT. So, how many of you have heard of Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions? All right, we're on the same page, a lot of us in the room. I'll level us up, though, with the basic definition. So Scope 1 emissions, if you're running a company, this is where you're focused on your direct emissions, the fuel that you're burning as part of your processes to power what you're doing. Think about the fuel to power heating your buildings, or the fuel to drive your fleet of vehicles, or any other direct emissions you may have as a company. Scope 2 emissions are indirect emissions, and this is related to the carbon embedded in your power grid. And as you think about that, sitting here in the state of Michigan, which has made some great progress, as Sharon has mentioned, still 30% of the energy generated here in the state of Michigan is from coal power sources. And you add another 30% from natural gas. So if you're running a business here in the state of Michigan, your opportunity to reduce Scope 2 emissions is one of your top priorities as part of your sustainability strategy, and it can have a huge impact. When we move to Scope 3 emissions, this is where it gets complicated. And in simple terms, this is the impact that your products have on your customers and their direct emissions. It's thinking about your supply chain and the embedded carbon inside of your products and managing that. And it can be very difficult. At Trane Technologies, we lead by example. We were the first company in our industry in 2022 to be recognized by the Science Based Targets Initiative. We also adhere to the net zero standard with the Paris Climate Accord. And we have very exciting strategies on how we're going to achieve our 2030 and 2050 commitments. And I'll give you some homework. You can go out on our website. I encourage you to read our sustainability report. It's a fantastic report that'll talk you through the details behind our sustainability strategy for our 2030 goals, our 2050 net zero goals, how we're measuring those and going about solutions. But what I'm here to talk to you today about is my passion for customers and what we're doing to focus on Scope 3 emissions. And at Trane Technologies, we have what's called the Gigaton Challenge, where we're committed by 2030 to remove a gigaton, or 1 billion metric tons of carbon from our customers' operations. This is an audacious goal to undertake over the decade. And if you're not familiar with what a gigaton is, it can be hard to concept. This is equivalent to 1 billion metric tons of carbon, which is 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions, or equivalent to the combined emissions of the France, UK, and Italy combined. And at first that might sound like, man, it's an unachievable goal. How could you go about such a big challenge? And what I'm going to talk to you today about is how we're approaching our Gigaton Challenge, the solutions that we're bringing, and then I'm going to bring up an example right here at the University of Michigan in the city of Ann Arbor, where we're participating with our technologies to make a difference. Portfolio of products at Trane, the Gigaton Challenge and the innovations and solutions that we're bringing to customers apply to all of our businesses and can be categorized into three types of solutions. One solution is how we're approaching delivering the most efficient equipment and systems and optimization to our customers to reduce the consumption of electricity that they have in their operations. And I could give you examples across all of our portfolios, but I'll highlight just one within our residential HVAC business. We're delivering high technology heat pumps that deliver very efficient ways of moving customers from carbon sourced heating in their homes to the electrification of heating. These heat pumps are 3 to 4 times more efficient than many incumbent systems, and it's a win-win because it's helping reduce the carbon emissions to the environment, but it's also helping homeowners have lower utility bills. And today, here at least in the United States and also in many parts of Europe, there's good incentives for homeowners to use to help supplement the cost through tax rebates to install these technologies. The second solution we're implementing is around reducing the fuel consumption for our customers. So I think about, like, I'll use an example on our Thermo King business. So these are these large refrigerated trailers that you see going down the highway. You pass them all the time, carrying that frozen pizza to campuses around the world. It's a critical job that needs to be done. And on the front of those trailers, you'll notice a cabinet. Inside that cabinet is a diesel motor. And the pizza is being frozen by the refrigeration cycle that diesel motor powers in that trailer as it's moving down the road. We're a leader in bringing electrification technology to that job to be done. And think about batteries now being onboard trailers, replacing diesel motors with electric motors, using innovative solutions like using axle power to generate power for the batteries, working with fleet customers, so when their trailers of frozen pizza are sitting stationary, they have an opportunity to plug it to clean electrical grids. These solutions can have a meaningful impact on reducing the amount of fuel consumption. The last solution that I'm going to present here is maybe one that you haven't thought about, and it is I'll reference some research. I encourage you to go out to this website. It's Project Drawdown. And the research done by Project Drawdown, if you haven't looked at it, highlights refrigerant conservation and the switch to low global warming potential refrigerants as the #1 conservation solution, period, that we can implement to have a positive impact on global warming. And so at Trane Technologies, this is one of our core initiatives to apply the technologies that we have to refrigerant conservation and the shift to low global warming potential refrigerants. What am I talking about? Maybe you haven't thought about the refrigeration cycle lately. So it's everywhere, right? It's keeping us cool in this building. It's keeping your home cool. You flip the HVAC on in your car. You grab the beer out of the bottom. You grab the frozen pizza out of the top. All that's, you know, the refrigeration cycle. And refrigerants are the fluid that you see when you look behind your refrigerator in those pipes, right? That's the refrigerant. And that refrigerant has a high global warming potential. And through history, we've made progress to reduce the global warming potential refrigerants. But today, one of the most popular refrigerants that's used, R134A, has a global warming potential of 1,430. So think about 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide. An equal kilogram of refrigerant has 1,430 times the global warming potential of that kilogram of carbon dioxide. It's massive, right? And that's why it is one of the biggest things that we can do to improve greenhouse gas emissions. We're trying to make sure that it doesn't get released into the environment as part of the life cycle of the product, and then also starting at the front end of the product to make sure that the refrigerants being used are the lowest global warming potential refrigerants out there. A ton of technology and innovation going into this, and Trane Technologies is at the leading edge. A bit about campus, and Sharon gave a great introduction of what's going on in the state of Michigan and here on campus in the city of Ann Arbor. And there's no better place to talk about sustainability in the country than here in Ann Arbor and the University of Michigan. Another homework assignment, you can go out on the internet and check out Ann Arbor's A20 Sustainability Initiative if you're not from this area. And what you'll see is one of the best programs in the country. And the same thing is happening here on campus at the University of Michigan and what they're doing to reduce their emissions. And the project that I'm going to highlight that Trane Technologies is involved in is the electrification of heating. And so when you think about heating, it's 38% of the energy consumption globally, with heating buildings being the #1 component of that. And there's many solutions that need to be addressed to reduce the emissions of heating in buildings. It starts with conservation, making sure that you have the most efficient structure that you're putting heat into. And then there's a whole host of technologies that are related to reducing the carbon of the heating process. And so here on campus, there's a project called the Hayward Street Geo-Exchange Facility. There are 99 bores in the ground, 700 feet deep, 20 foot apart. They have a closed loop water system that is connected to a Trane thermal management system. In the winter, like now, it's pumping heat from the ground into the building. And then when it gets warm in the summer, it's going to pump heat out of the building and into the ground. And it's a very low energy usage and sustainable solution. What it's replacing, and these type of systems are being deployed across the country in institutions like this, in large applications, is it's replacing the boiler on the heating cycle. So most large buildings have fossil fuel powered boilers that heat water that then heat the building. And that's for the winter months. And then in the summer months, it switches over to an electric driven device called a chiller that chills water and puts it through the building to cool. And so these thermal management systems are allowing for the electrification of heating, and then it allows for connection to clean energy sources to complete that sustainability cycle. And that's the thing that you'll learn when you do your homework assignment, that the solar programs both here on campus and in the city of Ann Arbor are just fantastic. So we're super excited about what's going on and the innovations around electrification of heat. And where this gets really exciting for us as MBA students and people pursuing our business career, as these technologies are to the point now where they make sense financially. So these thermal management systems I just explained are 4 times more efficient than incumbent technologies. And the financial payback on installing these systems are meaningful. These are really good investable projects. And this is where it gets exciting, because now you can get scale. People become really interested when the finances work with the outcome, and scaling technologies like this will have a big impact. So I made it this far without using the world's best buzzword, artificial intelligence. But I'm not going to get off the stage without mentioning it, because artificial intelligence is going to have and is having a massive impact on carbon emissions, especially in the built environment and in many other processes that are critical to the solutions. So when we think about emissions from buildings, what's going on with artificial intelligence is over the last 18 to 24 months, the compute power that's available from these large GPUs and these new data centers that have come online are allowing for deployment of sophisticated machine learning algorithms, generative AI, to optimize the operation of a building and to control a building in ways that were never thought of before. So traditionally, these buildings are throwing off tens of thousands of data points, all the controls, and there's sophisticated control systems happening. But there's a limit to what the algorithms and humans can do to optimize how these buildings operate. And what we're finding is artificial intelligence is finding new ways, new schemes, new methods to control buildings, and it's unlocking up to 20% more energy efficiency in a building. And if you multiply it by the scale of the opportunity that I just described, this will have a massive impact on decarbonization and on climate change. And it's a great place for me to wrap up, because when I think about artificial intelligence, just a few years ago, we never would have imagined that this type of innovation would have this type of impact on one of the big opportunities around building optimization. And being in this room and speaking with you all today, I am super optimistic about our future, because you're going to take artificial intelligence and find new ways to unlock its power that we haven't thought about yet. You all, as you go out into your careers, are going to find new innovations and new business models and new technologies that are going to unlock ideas that we never thought of before. And it's for that reason I'm very optimistic about our future. I think we have an opportunity to make a difference on the climate change outcome because of all of you and the talent that you're wanting to bring to this opportunity and to this space, and I thank you for your passion in that. I look, just to wrap up, I'll give you a couple final places to find some information. So first of all, I encourage you to go out to our website. We have the Healthy Spaces podcast. It hit #1 on Apple's technology charts twice last year. A great place to learn about climate tech and climate innovations. We connect it to our social purpose. And go out and check out what's called Operation Possible. And this will be a good cocktail question for tonight at happy hour. So I didn't get a chance to talk about Operation Possible. This is our social innovation project where we unlock the potential of our 40,000 employees to actually go innovate for big social challenges. And when you go out there, check out what we call the food cart. This is a social innovation that we put out there for anybody to pick up and work with us on to help reduce food loss in food markets. And it's a great innovation, and there's many examples of that. We'd love to interact with people on those topics. So I thank you for your time today. Wish you well on the rest of the conference. Look forward to talking to you tonight.
Hi, I'm Liesl Clark. It's so nice to be with you, and I did not expect that we would be competing with a beautiful 50-degree day outside, so I'm even more excited that all of you are in here with us, but I think we've got a really good fireside chat. We don't have a fire. I was thinking about a between two ferns theme, but decided that maybe not this afternoon, so we'll let that go. I come from just down the street. I think I'm closest to the pin because I walked over here from Dana. So I'm Director of Climate Action Engagement at the School for Environment and Sustainability. It's a new position, and it's new for me to be in academia. My background, most immediately, I come to you from Governor Whitmer's cabinet, where I was the Director of the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy for the first term. Prior to that, my experience is both public and private sector. I worked for Governor Granholm as well, the last role being Deputy Director of the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. And then on the private sector side, I worked at Accenture as well as founding my own clean energy sustainability company called 5 Lakes Energy that some folks in the Michigan sphere might be familiar with. Very excited to be with you here this afternoon. We have a great conversation, and what I'm going to ask my two colleagues here to do is introduce themselves and talk a bit about energyRE. There's a very nice connection to the ClimateCAP work that you all have already discussed, and I'm pretty excited about getting a little bit deeper into the clean energy and transmission side of the work that we all have to do together. So I'm going to turn first to Jeff to talk a little bit about his background and then talk a bit about the experience of energyRE.
Great. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's always great to come back. By background, I graduated here in 1990. It was pre-Ross, and I ultimately went to business school at another not-to-be-named business school, and then went to work for Stephen Ross at related companies, where I've been for 34 years as partners with Stephen and growing that business. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that first, because it's really the story of how energyRE was created. So at related companies, we have grown from when I started to be a relatively small developer of mostly affordable housing to grow into one of the largest real estate development companies in the United States. So today, we are based in New York City. We employ over 4,000 people. We have developed over $60 billion of assets, including Time Warner Center and Hudson Yards in New York City. And so what's interesting about that is our business model has always been to develop and hold real estate for the long term. And so very early on, I would say, before it was cool to be green, we thought that we needed to take a very strong approach to sustainability. And I think there were two main reasons why we kind of went heavy into sustainability early on. And one, because we thought, given the impact and the scale that we were developing, it was the right thing to do, and it was a little bit of save the world. And if we thought that if we could do it at the scale that we were developing, we'd send a message to the industry and be able to make change that way. And second, we thought, again, with our scale, if we tried new technologies and we invested in new technologies, back then it was actually much more expensive to develop in a clean way. But today, the cost of compliance has come down quite significantly. So I remember, actually, I was sitting on this stage, actually I think it was the building before this, 20 years ago in a conference with Steve Ross. And without ever discussing this in our office, he announced that day that we were going to commit our entire portfolio to LEEDs Gold, LEEDs Platinum. And I turned to him and said, really? And not knowing what it was going to cost or how we were going to get there, we were really very early adopters to LEED standards. And we built, we helped craft the LEED standards because they really didn't exist for residential buildings. We built the first LEEDs residential building. We built the first neighborhood LEEDs. We did commit our whole portfolio to LEEDs Gold and Platinum. At Hudson Yards, all the buildings comply. And now we are building the first all-electric residential and office towers in New York. We built the first passive house building. And so, I felt personally that our commitment to sustainability was far, in a way exceeded kind of the industry. And I'd say all that was fine for a very long time until ultimately New York City passed a law called Local Law 97. And what that law did was, for the very first time, it put a limit or a tax that will actually start next year on carbon emission that was going to come from excess carbon emission that was going to come from the buildings. And when they passed the law, I actually didn't pay too much attention to it because I just assumed, given everything that we had done and the commitments that we had made and the investments that we had made, that we were going to pass this new compliance methodology with flying colors. And so I asked some people to study our buildings and study this new law. And what I quickly realized is that we were going to fail epically, on every account. And really the reason is because when you think about LEEDs, the LEEDs standards were always about reducing energy consumption in the building. It was teaching us how to build more efficient and better buildings so that we ultimately consume less energy. That's kind of the basis of all of LEEDs. What this new law did was basically says, I don't care how much energy you use, don't emit any carbon. Well, now that's interesting, except our buildings do use energy. And when we really started to study this, there was a formula that basically, and really the intent when they passed that bill was to get building owners to improve their buildings, to make them more energy efficient. But what they didn't realize is no matter what you do at the end of the day, if the energy that's going into the building is powered by fossil fuels, the output is going to be carbon emission. There's really no getting around it. And so, we studied this bill, and I would say as an industry, the industry took a very hard stance and went hard against the administration and pushed back on this. And we said, well, maybe there's a better tact, maybe there's a better way. And so when we started to study the grid, the makeup of the energy that's produced in New York, it was actually 90% driven, or it was 80% driven by fossil fuels, going to 90 because a nuclear plant was being dismantled. It's called Indian Point. So 80% of the power, 90% of the power that drives New York City was created by fossil fuels. And so when we started to study this, we said, well, why is that the case? And it really goes back to the energy policy of the United States, which was to create power plants close into the load centers, because it has always been very, very difficult to move power great distances. So in almost every city, you'll see kind of within the core ring a power plant that is typically powered by coal or natural gas. The problem is when you try to clean up the cities and you try to close those plants, the land upon which it sits is not large enough to build renewables. And so we spent a lot of time talking to the city and explaining this law doesn't really make a lot of sense, and you're not really going to get the impact that you want. So what we thought we would do initially is we would build some, and along the way we had vertically integrated into construction companies, and we had a mechanical engineering company, and we had a very small scale solar development company. And so what we thought we would do is we'd buy some land, inexpensive land, we'd build some solar plants, and we would tag our building so that the input into the building was renewable energy, and then the output would be zero carbon emission. And so what we quickly realized that the key to this was the city, as part of Local Law 97, insisted that the grid is actually cleaned up. It couldn't be a fake transfer, it couldn't be an accounting transfer. So they wanted renewables into New York City grid. And so and the problem, again, we need lots of land and it has to be cheap. So we went to what we thought would be the cheapest land on one of the boroughs called Staten Island, and we bought hundreds of acres of land, and we were going to build some solar and do that. But what we quickly realized is no matter how much land there was on Staten Island, there certainly wasn't enough to repower all of New York City. And not only that, if we had this problem, all the building owners in New York had this problem. So we went to the city and state and said, look, this really doesn't work. There's not enough land in New York to accomplish this goal. But if you let us build utility scale solar and wind upstate New York, then we'll tag the buildings and say, basically have clean power. They said, no, we actually want the power in New York City. So after a lot of back and forth, we went to them and said, well, what if we did that? We built these power plants upstate, and then we built new transmission into New York City. And they said, aha, that's what we want. And what's interesting is that the second part of the energy policy of the United States was not just to build those power plants but in the cities, but as a result of that, we underinvested in transmission. And so these transmission lines don't exist, which to a novice in this space was somewhat shocking to me. It's like, how is it possible that we cannot move power around? And so ultimately, the city and state put out this RFP. We competed. And it's interesting, as a real estate developer, we didn't really have a lot of experience doing this. In fact, we had no experience doing this. And we had a pretty small internal energy team that was primarily focused on our sustainability initiatives and power procurement for our portfolio. And so with this very small team, we competed in what ultimately turned out to be the largest renewable energy project which will ever be developed in the United States. We won that RFP. It's called CleanPath, and CleanPath will ultimately be 25 utility scale plants, half wind, half solar, built all over upstate New York, attached to a 200-mile transmission line that will go directly into the New York City grid, into the Con Edison grid. This project will cost over $12 billion. It will provide 16% of the total power for New York City. So again, this was a somewhat amazing project that we won without really having ever done this before. And when we won, there was a little bit of celebration in the office, and then it was like a little bit of a holy shit, now what moment. And ultimately, we realized what we had to do, and we realized the opportunity. We spun this project called CleanPath out of our real estate business, and we used it to form a new company called energyRE. And we realized that in order, again, if this was a problem in New York and we could only solve 16% of the problem with the biggest project ever in the United States, that the opportunity was enormous. And that was really the story of how energyRE was created. We spun that project out, we formed energyRE, and then we did a worldwide search to really create a dedicated experience management team. And after several months, we found a CEO whose name is Miguel Prado, who was the CEO of EDPR, who was one of the largest renewable energy developers here. Miguel brought Ryan Brown with him from EDPR. And now today, this company, I'm going to fast forward through a couple of years, this company has over 100 employees. We have 90 projects in 17 states, including a replica of CleanPath, where in Chicago, we're going to bring Iowa wind into Chicago on a 300-mile transmission line called Sioux Green. We won one of the large offshore wind projects off of the coast of New York, which again will ultimately also provide another 10% of the power for New York City. The city picked another project along with us that will also provide hydropower from Quebec, another 16%. So when you start thinking about 2030, 2031, you can envision a world in New York City where this grid went from 80 to 90% fossil fuel powered to 80 to 90% renewable power. And it's going to happen. And this is really the opportunity for energyRE. We think it's something that we can do across the United States. These are large-scale infrastructure projects. As I think about everything I've learned about the industry, the United States' energy policy around renewables has cleaned up rural America. If you look at most rural areas in the United States, there's tons of renewable energy. In fact, in New York, it's the exact opposite of what I said about New York City. If you go upstate, it's 80 to 90% renewables already. In fact, there's excess renewables that can't get used. It's called curtailment. And so the industry has done a good job doing that, but the industry is really struggling cleaning up the urban load centers because it is much more difficult, right? It's all about infrastructure development, transmissions, right-of-way, generation, politics, finance, and these are large, large dollars. And so that's really why we think this is a decades-long opportunity for energyRE. And for those of you that are looking for careers in this space, I think it's I look at our business in the real estate side. We've grown to the size that we are over 50 years. I think energyRE is going to grow as big as that business in a span of 10 years. So I think it's nice to be in an industry where you have the wind at your back, no pun intended. You have government support. It's really, and you can really make a difference. This is going to make huge change across the United States. So that's how it got started.
That's your story, and you're sticking to it.
That's the story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I think it's really compelling, and I like what you've laid out and how it connects to all the conversations that this group is having today and tomorrow. Ryan, can you tell us a little bit about your history prior to energyRE and what brings you to this world?
Yeah, happy to. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Brown. I was trying to think of something funny or cute to say about football as a fellow Midwesterner, but as a guy who grew up in Wisconsin, lives in Indiana, and went to the University of Chicago for undergrad, there's nothing to say about. Nothing to say other than congratulations on your national championship. So, yeah, I've actually spent almost my entire career working in clean energy, initially in state government, in policy and programs, and then later at a company that Jeff mentioned earlier, EDP Renewables, which is one of the largest global developers of renewable energy. I was afforded opportunities from a wide range of opportunities, from being the first person to go out into the field and sign 200,000 acres of land for one of the largest multi-phase wind farms that exist in the country, to being a country manager, where they asked someone to raise their hand and sent me up to Canada to some of the most challenging parts of North America to develop and build our company there. I had to go clean up a challenging situation on a wind farm that was developed but wasn't being allowed to produce. It was being curtailed in Mexico. So kind of a real wide range of opportunities. At the latter part of my career at EDP, led our business in the eastern US. So got to develop lots of projects here in the Midwest, the East Coast, in New York, and in the Southeast. So really a great range, and 20 years, makes you one of the most seasoned veterans in the renewable space. And I think we'll talk about that here in a little bit. This is a young industry, in an industry that is growing very rapidly and needs more talent and new people brought to it because it is growing so quickly. As Jeff said, I joined energyRE 2 years ago, kind of a new challenge, going from a big publicly traded company that was one of the largest in the space to a private company with this clear vision of sort of unlocking renewables for cities and hard to abate places. For me, having spent so many years developing those rural projects that were cleaning up the rural areas, I could see very clearly that the next phase was going to be transmission rollout, new technology rollout, and unlocking this really difficult puzzle of bringing those clean electrons and developing those clean electrons in urban areas. As was mentioned, we have grown in the last 2 years to a really exciting company that has 4 kind of key verticals, one of which is transmission and transmission-led development. So Jeff mentioned Clean Path New York, our Sioux Green project. The only thing I'll add on those 2 things that make them very unique is they're both underground. So they're high voltage transmission lines that, instead of above ground, are going to be buried, one along existing right-of-ways in New York and through the Hudson River. In Iowa, the Sioux Green project is actually utilizing a 100-plus-year-old rail right-of-way, and so will be adjacent to a rail line for 350 miles, bringing clean energy from Iowa to Chicago. Another vertical is our offshore wind vertical, where we got really exciting news 2 weeks ago off the coast of New Jersey and New York, where we were awarded the largest contract to ever be awarded in the history of the United States for an offshore wind farm. So it's 2.4 gigawatts of offshore wind, about 40 miles off the coast of New Jersey, and very excited to be developing that with partners and going to deliver that towards the end of this decade. We also have an onshore development platform, primarily focused in the Southeast. And why the Southeast? That is actually one of the last bastions of places in the country that has been slow to transition to renewables. It is also a place in which load growth, electricity load growth, industrial growth is out of this world, right? There's plants being onshored. The electricity demand in that area of the country is exploding. And so we like that area for solar storage development for onshore. And then finally, we have a joint venture on the distributed generation side, where we look at a smaller scale and try to target commercial and industrial customers for on-site renewable energy development, EV chargers, et cetera. So that kind of gives you a taste of the things that we're in.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And in both of your comments, you really wove together all the challenges that are in front of us from a climate perspective to deal with from the energy transition. We heard from Dean Matusik earlier some of the statistics about the goals that are in front of us at the national level, as well as most recently adopted here in Michigan, 100% clean energy standard by 2040. And in your comments, both Ryan and Jeff, you talked a bit about examples that help us think about the scale. I want to zoom out for a second, because there's been some research done lately in order to kind of wrap our heads around the challenge that's in front of us. We need to bring online every week 2 400 megawatt solar farms, which is about 2,000 acres per farm, for the next 30 years in order to meet the challenges in front of us from a national perspective. We also need to decarbonize 4.5 million buildings by 2050. So there's a lot to do. Now there's a lot of solutions, and I think I have a lot of faith because there's a lot of opportunity in front of us. But I'm curious from each of your perspectives, what do you think are some of the biggest obstacles there to doing that work at a meaningful pace? Jeff?
It is certainly a challenge. Coming from the real estate industry, which is arguably one of the most capital-intensive businesses in the world, we jumped headfirst into probably the only business in the world that's more capital-intensive than the real estate business, and that's renewable energy. To give you a sense of the scale, the projects that we're working on today is over $35 billion of development. Those projects were put together in just 2 years. And so one of the first challenges is capital availability. Interest rates have obviously had a huge impact on any business that is capital intensive, but the renewable energy business in particular. We at energyRE just closed a capital raise at our top co level. Most of these projects are financed with project-specific finance and project-specific capital. But we just raised $1.2 billion of capital at the energyRE corporate level. So we were fortunate in being able to do that in this type of environment, but capital availability is a huge issue, and the cost of that capital as interest rates have gone up. So one major challenge. The other challenge I would say is supply chain. Because this industry is so new, everything that we're doing is semi-experimental. And when you combine that with the onshoring initiatives that the federal government is pushing on the industry, there's not enough, there are either none or not enough factories in the United States that can produce solar panels, cable. We're buying cable now from Germany. We buy converter stations. Almost all the large components that we need for these mega projects don't come from the United States. China is the largest producer of solar panels in the world, and the US is cutting off access to them. Now, maybe for good reason, but that creates supply chain challenges. We're building, Ryan mentioned the offshore project called Leading Light Wind. And so to give you a sense of how big these wind turbines are, if you were to take a wind turbine from tip, if you place the blade up, down to the bottom, I don't know if anyone here has been to Hudson Yards or any New York or the Empire State Building. These turbines, each one is as tall as the Empire State Building, right? We have to build 100 of them, right? So we think it's hard to build one building. We have to build 100 of them in the middle of the water. So if I were to show you a picture of the pile, right, basically the base that goes from the top of the water to the ocean floor, that base is as wide as basically between these two walls. So that's a roll of steel as big as this room. So this product doesn't exist. You can't just order this and it comes in a FedEx truck, right? So what are we doing? Right, today we're actually investing in and building a factory on the waterfront that could actually produce these monopiles so that we could supply the monopiles to the US offshore industry. That product has typically come from Europe and is shipped in pieces on boats. Today, because of the IRA and the initiatives to support the industry, are very positive for the industry, but it also requires domestic content. So the domestic supply chain needs to catch up to the demand for production. So I would say those are probably, and then the third is we have a shortage of talented people. Talent is probably, if I were to reorder, I'd put talent at the top. And I think that's why I've been talking to Michigan and many other schools about creating programs for this, because I think this is the biggest opportunity in my career. If I tell my kids, this is where you should focus, because the next decades is going to be the biggest opportunity, and it's across everything. It could be engineering, finance, operations management, supply chain, you name it. Whatever you are interested in, you can do in this industry, and the demand for this talent is going to be off the charts. and it's a huge opportunity. I know there's more than Michigan here, but it's a huge opportunity for the University of Michigan to be a leader in this.
Let me tag, maybe via example, 2 additional challenges. I think Jeff nailed it. But if we're, let's say a group of us, right, decided to start a solar development company today, and Michigan just passed this amazing policy, 100% renewables, very clear goals. We go out and we do the first part, right? We go out and get the land, we site the solar park. You've got to go out and get that. You want to site that very close to existing transmission lines. And not only existing transmission lines, but transmission lines that have the ability to have new power injected into it. I just checked before I came up here. The electric grid that we're connected to at this moment is the Midwest ISO, MISO. It's producing 80 gigawatts at this second, right? Right now, there are 240 gigawatts of new projects in the interconnection queue, in a queue waiting to be studied to then hopefully connect to this grid. And that is one of the biggest constraints. I mean, Jeff said it earlier, the transmission system in this country is really outdated, underinvested, and when you have this kind of transition, right, where you're trying to flip the power grid and the power system almost on its head, that is a pacing item and is something that absolutely has to get better and has to go faster. Assuming we get through that, we get the land, we look good on transmission, then we have to permit these projects. And whether it's a massive project in the ocean off the coast of New Jersey, it's a transmission line in New York State, or it's in a township here just outside of Ann Arbor in Michigan. It's a campaign. It's a political campaign in which you need to get people aligned with you and build momentum, build alignment so people see the benefit of that project for themselves. Because there's a very challenging dynamic, frankly, in any industry with information. And there's all kinds of information out there that would lead you to believe that a wind turbine is going to cause cancer, or a solar panel is going to cause the end of the earth. You've got to have your stuff together and really go out to communities and show them value, show them facts, and get them on board so those projects can be delivered. So those are 2 additional constraints that no doubt we have to run at lightning speed, but there are existing constraints that have to be worked through in the coming years.
So in the course of both of your constraints, I heard just a huge amount of opportunity, not only for everybody in this room, but certainly for economic development focused individuals in states and really across the country. Certainly in Ryan, in your description, I'm also hearing about positions. Jeff, you mentioned, engineering, project development, financing, contracting work. In your comments, Ryan, I also heard communications folks, obviously lawyers, all that type of outreach that's necessary in order to make sure that these projects do move forward, because we've got a real pace challenge in front of us. And so there's just a huge amount of opportunity that gets me certainly really excited. So let's go back to offshore wind for a second, because honestly, that's one of the things I love to talk about. We look at that New Jersey effort, and it's pretty exciting what you all are having the chance to do out there. I do know that when you look at the regulatory structure for offshore wind on the oceans, it's overseen by BOEM, who has an auction process set up, which has a tendency to set prices in a way that I think isn't really ideal for customers. That sort of structure doesn't exist in the Great Lakes and in some other parts where you might see offshore wind development. I was wondering if either of you had perspectives on that.
I'll start off. So just to put some details around what you were talking about. So we talked about our offshore wind project called Leading Light Wind. So one of the most interesting days since we started this company, probably for both of us,
Yes, for sure.
is actually it was 4 days.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
It's
almost
4 days, 4 days in a row. BOEM, which is a federal agency, conducted an auction of 6 sites off the coast of New York and New Jersey. And when I say sites, it is water. So we had the opportunity to buy 83,000 acres of water 40 miles off the coast of New York, New Jersey, for $645 million that we had to pay 10 days after we won the auction. The auction happened, I forgot where it started, but it was like $50 million, and it went in $1 million increments over 4 days online. So you had all these groups competing for the 6 sites, and you had to bid on each of the 6 sites simultaneously. So you had 6 sites, it went every half hour for 4 days until people dropped out. So at the end, you felt good that you won, but it means you absolutely paid the highest price by a lot. And we actually, felt good about kind of our price given the size that we got versus the other 6 sites, the geographic proximity to land. So there were a bunch of factors that we felt from a per megawatt cost that we did well in the auction. A couple comments though, again, challenges in the industry. We are the only US company, we're the only American company that bid for these rights. And I think that's something that, again, opportunity for everyone in this room, and it's something our government is obviously very focused on, but we competed with BP, Shell, basically all the foreign oil and gas companies and foreign European utilities, so Equinor and Ørsted, and these are all public companies with enormous balance sheets. And so we had to go out and raise capital ahead of time. So we went to domestic pension funds, Canadian pension funds, and aligned capital with us to bid at this auction without knowing what the price was going to be. And you think about this pitch to an investor. I want you to basically allocate $800 million in a bucket over here. We may or may not win. We don't know what the price is going to be. We don't know what it's going to cost to build. We don't have the manufacturing capability to build this thing. And we have no contract for offtake at the end, right?
We need the money in 4 days.
And we need the money 10 days after.
8 years before the project will
8 years
ever
before
generate
the project.
$1 of revenue.
So, as an American company, I mean, we start off at a pretty big disadvantage, but it was exciting. We won one of these auctions, and we did rally the capital together. We did 2 weeks ago, as Ryan said, win the offtake agreement. So that offtake agreement, first we actually competed with the state of New York and for an offtake agreement, and we lost out to the foreign oil and gas companies. And then New Jersey did an auction a couple of months later, and we were competitive and we won. So what we won is basically a 25-year contract with the state of New Jersey, where they will pay us over $1 billion a year. And that money we ultimately will use to finance and capitalize the cost of construction of building these wind farms in the 83,000 acres of water. So it's a very interesting, exciting project, and hopefully it'll turn out to be as successful as we think it will be.
Yeah, I mean, just on the offshore front, I would just add that you probably read in the news that there's a lot of ups and downs, right? Many of the contracts, the developers who won those BOEM leases years ago locked their revenue contracts pre-COVID, during COVID, pre-explosion in inflation. The US is learning from that, right? The auctions, the RFPs that happen now are adjusting so that our contracts can be indexed, right? So they move up and down with commodities, move up and down with inflation and cost of capital. And so that is encouraging to me. There's bound to be bumps, right? When you bring a brand new industry to the country and have to build all the infrastructure at the outset, things like that. The state of New Jersey, very innovative. Most of the US for offshore wind was treating it like onshore, where the developers would say, I'm going to connect to 15 different places and all competing for the best spots to connect to the grid. Some states are now starting to say, all right, no, like this is chaos. We're going to plan. The developers who have the leases out there, we're going to plan, we'll build the infrastructure, we'll take that off of your risk palette, and you all should get to this point and connect and deliver projects. So I am encouraged to see that sort of, I mean, there's a lot of pain that comes in those early years, but I think the industry is maturing, the governments are maturing, and I think we're going to be able to deliver on these big goals very quickly in the next decade.
Yep. Lots to do. All right, I think we're going to go to some questions from the app. So Alex is going to be the voice of, I don't know,
The people.
the disembodied voice. The voice of the people. The voice of the people.
Thanks, Liesl. So the average transmission project takes 18 years to complete. What is energyRE doing to accelerate that timeline with their own project portfolio?
That is, yeah, I'm not sure I've ever heard someone say 18. I thought it was 15, but okay, maybe.
That's for
Still
undergrounding.
really,
That is
really
an
bad.
unfortunate statistic.
I think a couple things to say on this front. Right, I mean, I've been in renewables for 20 years. You hear this phrase in renewables, which is, if you love renewables, you have to at least like transmission. People don't like transmission, right, in this country. It's not something they think about. It's something that's highly regulated, and it's just, it's a hard pitch. One of the innovations with our projects is that our projects will not be seen, right? They will be underground. They're using existing right-of-way. So the permitting is simpler and more straightforward, right? You're not disturbing, undisturbed areas. You're disturbing areas that have already been disturbed for dozens, if not 100 years. And so I think that is one element of it. Another is trying to fix the chicken and the egg situation, right? If I'm a transmission developer and I say, hey, I go to generators and say, hey, I'm going to build a transmission line. Build your generation so I can deliver it to the other end. The generators all say, okay, great, like you go first, build your transmission line. Yeah. I say, well, I need you to go first so I can get my financing. And so you're in this standoff where like you're frozen. Doing what was done in New York, where the state was innovative and thought about, okay, I'm willing to pay for a bundled contract that wraps the generation, the transmission, delivered to the end user, breaks that chicken and the egg cycle and gets things done. So I think that contract structure, that way to procure is also a way to eliminate those 18-year timelines.
But you did highlight one other thing that unfortunately didn't pass at the federal level in this past session, which is permitting reform. And that's, one of the things, if you ask another challenge, is regulations haven't caught up to the needs of the industry. And permitting reform is something that is desperately needed, because permitting reform essentially would allow the federal government to override local constraints to passage for transmission. And so there are many communities that don't want transmission to run through their communities because they are not the direct beneficiary, because transmission might be 300 miles and the beneficiary is 300 miles away. And so unless the federal government is able to override, it will take 15 years. The other interesting thing that you see in transmission is you have, I'd say, people supporting environment fighting people that support the environment, right? And that's an unusual case, right? Because, if you support renewables, you might have to support the destruction of some forests. You might have to run the cable under the river and disturb the fish that are in the river. So you kind of have people that are usually on the same side of the table suddenly, at odds with each other. And so I think it's just people are going to have to understand a little bit more, what we're going to have to sacrifice in order to allow renewables and the transition to occur.
And then our last question here, zooming out a bit from the renewables business and more to Related's core business. So how does Related approach climate risk to the built environment, such as sea level rise in development areas, especially considering the company's large footprint in Miami area?
It's 100% true. I mean, we have now for many, many years, first of all, we've moved all of our kind of critical infrastructure, which always used to be in the basements, up to second, third, or higher floors in our buildings. We also created, either we elevate buildings or we create flood walls around areas that are in kind of low elevation neighborhoods. So it has certainly changed. The biggest change probably mechanical and infrastructure systems, above grade.
Jeff, Ryan, and Liesl. A round of applause.